Hello, everybody. I want to welcome Sami Brown. She's one of the co-creators, co-founders, and co-hosts of Carnivore Together, our online carnivore community. So welcome, Sami.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
So I would love to have you share with everybody what led you to try the carnivore way of eating.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for asking. My journey started probably October of 2025. I was listening to a podcast, Diary of a CEO, and Stephen Bartlett, the host, invited Dr. Boz to come and talk about the keto lifestyle. So I jumped into keto, first focusing on low carb, not no carb yet, and I noticed that I felt better. I had been experiencing brain fog. I had a sports injury that I was trying to heal from, and I just felt like I couldn't control the inflammation in my knee, in my body. And Dr. Boz's interview spoke directly to that. So I figured I would give the keto diet a try, and I was successful in, lowering my inflammation. And you and I actually met a couple months later after I had started playing around with it, and I started learning a little bit more about the carnivore diet, which is just, I guess, a very restrictive version of keto. Because I was already kind of on that journey, carnivore struck my interest for a few different reasons. One, because it's so simple. I don't really have to count anything anymore. I don't have to worry about the grams of carbs that I'm intaking. It's just much simpler and easier and more sustainable for me. Um, so I probably started tiptoeing my way into the carnivore lifestyle maybe 2 months after I started keto, and it took me a couple months to really latch on to the carnivore lifestyle. And I've been doing it, I'm still relatively new in the game. I've been doing it probably for a couple of months now, but it seems so much simpler. And I have noticed that I feel sharper cognitively. My recovery for my knee is going better. So I guess the universe just brought me to the carnivore lifestyle.
That's wonderful. I think that happens to a lot of people where they listen to a podcast or they're looking around and they see something and then, or they're listening on YouTube and then all of a sudden you kind of get on that algorithm and you can just get more and more information and you start connecting with some of the greats like Dr. Boz. What is her full name if people are looking her up?
Yeah, Dr. Boseman. I think her first name is Annette Boseman,
Mhm.
and she's really great. She is an MD, and if you want to listen to the Diary of a CEO, the episode that she's on, it's really great. And I know she personally has some resources too. And she was just a great way for me to step into the low carb lifestyle.
So, how long have you been eating carnivore?
Only for a couple of months. I've been slowly tiptoeing my way into it, as I said previously. Um, as I was fully transitioning, I kind of went back and forth a little bit. I was talking, I think actually, Catherine, you and I were talking a little bit as I was tiptoeing my way to full carnivore, and I would give maybe weekly or bi-weekly updates like, all right, I'm 60% carnivore, I'm 80% carnivore, I'm 90% carnivore. And, it's tricky to navigate that transition. Looking back, I think it probably would have been easier if I just ripped off the Band-Aid and cut the cravings immediately. But, it's nerve-wracking walking into a new lifestyle like this. So I kind of slow stepped it, but I made my way there and I'm happy to be here.
That's great because I know a lot of people are really nervous about going in full blown. I think we have a lot of withdrawal symptoms that are going to come up if we jump from a very high carb or moderately high carb right down to zero carb or close to zero carb. So I think that's for each individual. And I also agree greatly with you, Sammy, about like there's a lot of fear as we're entering into this because we've been brainwashed for so long that you need fruits and vegetables. You need this. I know that we're okay usually with giving up grains and sugar. We know sugar is bad for us, but the fruit and the vegetables and the fiber that brings a lot of fear to people. So everyone is a little bit different in how whether they can taper, jump right into it. So now at stage that you're in right now, how many weeks has it been?
Oh man, I'm not as good at counting weeks as other people are, but I would guess probably 8 to 10 weeks at this point.
Excellent. And right now, are you pure zero carb or are you just low carb? What kind of does your food consist of?
Yeah, so typically I eat a lot of beef, a lot of butter, a lot of salt, the basics, but I personally include cheese in my diet. As I was tiptoeing my way, as I said, into the carnivore lifestyle, I did a lot of experimentation to know what would work for me. Some of the things that I did were successful, like adding cheese to my diet, for example, worked for me. I'm not overweight. I'm not trying to lose weight. I've always had more of a lean body. So the addition of the dairy worked for me personally. I'm eating enough fat in my cuts of meat that, my stool isn't hard. I'm not having issues like that. Whereas I know some people do experience that. And I think the reason why tiptoeing my way into this diet was so successful is because I gave myself the grace to experiment and really understand what worked for me and what didn't.
So I know people are going to be really curious about the difficulties that you had in the first weeks of this transitioning.
Yeah, it was easy for me to slide back into my old habits if I had the slightest provocation, right? I'll give a couple of examples. So as I was going through this transition, it was my mother's birthday, and I went home and visited the family for the weekend. And I had a piece of birthday cake with my family. We were celebrating, and I just was like, you know what? One piece of cake isn't going to kill me. It'll be just fine. And it was not just fine. I felt heavy, I guess. Something interesting happens too, just my own reaction to carbohydrates. My face often will swell in the mornings, which is really weird. But when I cut carbs out of my diet, I found that I lost that inflammation. It's, a little bit past 8 o'clock this morning, and you can see that my face isn't super swollen like typically it is. I should comment underneath this video and show a picture of myself when I did have the morning swollen face that I used to get so frequently. And there were moments too. So I guess that's a social piece of it where I fell kind of off the wagon there. But there were also times where I had pretty intense cravings. I remember specifically there was this one weekend I was about to get my period and I was like, you know what, F it. I'm just gonna eat whatever I want to and not even care. I had a bunch of chocolate, I had a croissant, like all these carby awful things that I hadn't had at that point. Really, I hadn't eaten like that in weeks. And oh, I paid the price. It was I certainly paid the price. I'm struggling a little bit with hot flashes too. Just I think it's a hormonal thing, and my hot flashes reared back up. I had the swollen face, and those experiences, though, I think were important to my journey because it showed me it's really not worth it. For that instant gratification in the moment, the long-term consequences that I was fighting off, the payoff just wasn't there for me.
Mm. And like I know a lot of people in the first couple weeks kind of feel like really sick, flu-like symptoms, like they'll call it the keto flu. Did you experience anywhere you just weren't feeling good, you didn't have enough energy, anything like that come up for you in the first couple weeks?
I did. I found though very quickly that adding more electrolytes, eating more salt really helped that. There were moments where my body felt off, maybe a little shaky, maybe a little weak. My head was maybe kind of fuzzy. It's hard for me to exactly describe my symptoms, but I just knew that I was feeling off. And spoke to you, I Googled around a little bit, and turns out electrolytes were to blame or lack thereof. So I would have a little bit of salt, and it took about 20 minutes, and I would feel better again. So that was certainly one factor. And prior to this, prior to me starting my carnivore journey, I'm struggling with clinically insufficient vitamin D levels. So I just have a vitamin gap that I'm trying to close even prior to my carnivore journey. And as I've been taking vitamin D and magnesium as well, I've started to feel my energy levels regulate a little bit. And I'm hoping now that I've transitioned to carnivore that I won't have to continue taking these vitamins because it's the natural human diet, right? All of these things are built into this lifestyle that we're a part of. So once I've closed the gap from my previous lifestyle, I'm hoping that I can just float free without having to take vitamins.
A little bit earlier about seeing some changes in your physical health, like some of the inflammation, your knee, and some changes in your your mind, your focus, your clarity. So, is there anything else that you've been noticing in both your physical and your mental health since you've started?
Yes, actually, that's such a great question, specifically related to mental health. As I was working through the transition, there were moments that I just experienced anxiety, and I'm not typically prone to bouts of anxiety, but something about the transition really triggered some of those emotional responses in me. And now I'm on the other side of it. As of now, I'm not experiencing anything like that, but I think it's important that people are aware that these things will crop up as you're adopting the carnivore lifestyle and know that they're normal. I didn't really have anybody to ask these questions to because there's no one really around me aside from you who's going through similar things. So I relied heavily on ChatGPT, on YouTube, Dr. Chafee Berry, the greats in the field that we all know of. And I think that's part.
That you think keeps you on track, that you're going to keep going?
I think just the way that I feel, the fact that I'm running so much, my body feels like it's running so much more efficiently. My recovery is going better. Aesthetically, I like that my face isn't swollen every morning. So those things are motivating enough to me that I think I'll keep going. But also the fact that you and I have connected and we're creating a community. It's so easy to feel isolated in this journey. And I do think, even though I am seeing the benefits, if I were going this alone, the social pressures, people not understanding, this diet, this way of life isn't the norm. And I think it's just, for me, it's important to have a supportive community of people to almost normalize what I'm doing and to feel involved and not alone.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how a lot of people are feeling, and that's why we're creating this online community and to keep all of the noise out of this community on
I'll
purpose.
just jump in too and
Yeah.
say one additional thing that, you sparked in me. One of the great things about Carnivore Together is the information there is reliable. When you Google around and you look at things, there are all these articles, and you don't know whether or not they're research based. You don't know whether or not the people explaining things are, reputable. People often will bash the carnivore lifestyle and say you're going to have a stroke or a heart attack, but really, there's no research that supports that. So to me, it's important to know that there's a place I can go that has reliable information. I can arm myself with facts, which feels important?
And it feels safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels safe that we can be together and feel safe without having the people that are against this and that don't have any information. A lot of us, I know, if you're new to this or you're just been on this for a really long time, that information helps us because we're all listening to the physicians and we're listening and we're looking at some of the research and you'll see on our site that we have a lot of books and access in a resource library for people to look at this information. And it just gives us that really safe feeling that we're doing the right thing rather than listening to the people that are saying, no, 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 don't do that. That's going to kill you. And they don't have any information. They haven't done the work that we're doing. So here's a question. And I know people that are listening to this, maybe from different parts of the world. And of course, we're in the United States, we're in the Northeast, and we kind of want to get people to start talking about like, where do you source your meat from? And are there any particular products that you recommend that help with the carnivore lifestyle?
Yeah. For me, I've kind of been navigating this journey a little bit myself and thinking about the best way to source my meat. I think ultimately what I would like to do is connect with a farmer and buy like half a cow and keep it in the freezer, but I'm not there yet. I still have to buy my freezer, all the logistics. So for right now, I'm just going to my local grocery store, Wegmans, Aldi, whatever's around, and I'm getting a bunch of ground beef that I just keep on hand. And chuck roasts actually are my favorite. So I personally don't love leftover hamburger. I like it cooked fresh and I eat it right in the moment, but I work full time, so sometimes I need to meal prep. Chuck roast for me is the best. That's the best meal prep. I love it left over. I love it fresh. It's perfect. So that really has been a godsend to me. And actually, I just this past week started eating ham steaks, and I love a good ham steak. I know oftentimes people talk specifically about beef, but I've enjoyed mixing in a little bit of ham myself. So, yeah.
Yeah, adds a variety to it. Yeah. So just generally our local grocery stores you've been getting your meat from, and looking forward to getting a freezer full of meat. And I know that's what I do. So I hope that comes to you sooner than later, because it's really nice to not have to go to the grocery store so often. Oh my God, I love not having to go to the grocery store. All right, now I got a question for you that people might be interested in is, how do you cook your chuck roast?
So I take my chuck roast and I pat it so it's dry, and then I pretty heavily salt both sides of it. I throw a little bit of butter into my Dutch oven and I sear both sides of it until I get this really nice brown crust. And from there, I throw in probably 3/4 of a stick of butter. I put the top on my Dutch oven and I throw it into the oven 250 for about 4 hours. And when it comes out, it's just melt in your mouth. And it
Mm.
microwaves well, it reheats well. It's my go-to.
And it smells amazing. I remember the first time I did Sammy's recipe. Oh my God, my house, I was like, it just smelled that like rich melted butter. It's really pretty good. So for those of you like if you're listening and you're not sure what a Dutch oven is, it's kind of a deep cast iron pan, but it's very deep. And then it comes with a cast iron cover. So you can throw that right into your oven right off of the stove.
I will say too, as we're talking about recipes and cooking in the carnivore lifestyle, I have to mention the greasy kitchen. That's something that comes with the territory, something that I really struggled with. I like to have a clean house. When I have guests over, I don't want it to smell like oil and meat and butter and all those things all the time. So I really had to problem solve a little bit as to how to address that, right? And ultimately, I did a few different things. One, I started grilling more. Even though it's winter here, we live in northeastern US, so we're very snow covered right now. I just dragged my grill up onto my back porch, and even though it's the middle of the winter and there's a blizzard around us, I've started grilling, which has been really helpful. The other thing I've done, because sometimes you just want to pan fry something, whether it's a steak or, sear a chuck roast, whatever it is. I have these wires that are grease covers that I can just put on top of the pan that I'm using, and that has really helped a lot. But other than that, I have a week every Sunday I reset my house. I Lysol the floor, I wipe my walls down, I do all of the things to make sure that my house smells fresh and clean all the time, and that's worked really well. I think it would be hard if my house was open concept. My kitchen, thankfully, is kind of on the other side of my house, and I hung a curtain over the opening so that way when I'm cooking and the smoke is going everywhere, I can shut the curtain, which has also helped. But when I first started this lifestyle, I did not know what to do with that. I was like, oh, I can't do this. My house is always greasy, but there are certainly ways to address it. You just have to learn the tips and tricks as you go.
I see a lot of people online that do air fryer, and I'm gonna want to try that because I do like cooking in my cast iron pan. It's just a habit, and I do have a screen, but it's a more stable screen. It's got metal on the outside of it, so the screen. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, can burn. So we guys, we're gonna put in our sourcing and product section. We're gonna put a link to the screen that you can buy, the one that we're using. And the one that we have usually fits a variety size of pans, which is pretty nice. But yeah, I'm thinking about the air fryer. I want to try that. That's got to keep some of that grease down. So I have not experimented with that, and I hope I see some recipes that we're going to post up that uses an air fryer. But thank you for sharing the don't be shocked when your kitchen smells like a carnivore and it's covered in grease. So that is an issue that we need to get more information about to share how to minimize that. So a question people might be interested in is when you started this, what was the reaction of your friends and family? Have you told them?
When I was first starting the carnivore lifestyle, I chose not to advertise it too broadly in my own life. People didn't typically know that I was doing it. If I were going out with friends, I would just order steak or chicken wings with no sauce and I would eat my dinner. And, people are minding their own business, thinking about their own stuff. Nobody really noticed. I did tell my family, my parents know, and their reaction was very typical. They were like, "Oh, but you should still eat fruits and vegetables." And I had to explain to them, I don't want the oxalates, I don't want all these things that are bad for you that we find in vegetables. And there's this big conspiracy that vegetables are good for you that has been around since the food pyramid, right? So I certainly had to navigate that conversation with my family, but they trust in, my decision making and they back me up at the end of the day. So I appreciate that. But especially lately, I've been telling people in my life more frequently that I am doing this diet just because people talk to me about things that are relevant to it that I think could help. So I'll give an example. I didn't explain that very well, but one of my colleagues was talking about her daughter and how her daughter has all of these health issues. She hasn't been feeling well. She doesn't know what to do. She's tried everything. She's tried a million doctors and she just feels off. She has no energy. And, I took the opening to explain a little bit about the carnivore lifestyle and how it may be able to help and how you don't need doctors. You can control your health yourself by making decisions related to your diet. I shared a little bit of information with her. I sent a video, a Dr. Chafee video to her. And, now that I'm a little bit more comfortable myself, I have been opening up a little bit to those around me in times where I think it may be helpful. But, I'm certainly not, I don't want to push this lifestyle onto anyone. But if they're curious, I'm happy to talk about it.
I think that's great. I think that's one thing I notice about people who are going into keto or carnivore, or low carb, zero carb, is that they're really kind about it. They're not, putting it in people's face and this is what you need to do. I think that we all feel like you do you and you do what's best for you. And when we share what we're doing, they may not do anything with it, but we're always planting a seed with people. Maybe in 5 years when something goes really wrong and somewhere else they hear a little bit more about this, healing lifestyle way of eating that they may say, you know what, I heard that. I remember someone else mentioning that. So there that seed all of a sudden gets nourished and germinated and it starts to grow and then that's when they might start it. So people will get on board with this in their own time, but it is good to kind of share that there's an option out there if people are interested. So thank you for that. Do you have any tips on how to respond to people that don't support you?
Actually, through our conversations, Catherine, you gave me a tip that I love and that I've started using myself. And it's kind of to flip it around on the people asking the question. If someone gives me a hard time about eating carnivore, I just ask them, are you diet shaming me right now? And that very quickly makes people take a step back. If you tie the word shame to anything, people automatically are like, "Oh no, I wasn't doing that." And it kind of rests from there. Maybe that's a little bit of a mean-spirited response, but it keeps people in their lane and it kind of makes me laugh a little bit. So I enjoyed that tip.
I think it's like the context in which it's delivered and you saying it with a smile on your face. And people will definitely, they just stop dead in their tracks. Are you lifestyle shaming me? And what it is they're not trying to say, generally, I don't believe people are trying to hurt you. They're just seeing it from their perspective and that what they think about, like, like how they should be eating and their own lifestyle is just what's coming out. I don't think it's personal. I never take that personal. It's just that, and I don't want to come in as attacking like, well, I know more than you because I'm more educated on this than you. We don't ever want to do that. We're not coming from that space. But yeah, that is a good line, especially if you bring it with a smile on your face. So hopefully people use it appropriately.
Yeah, I've had good luck with that. And you're right. Say it a little bit in a joking manner, and it's just enough to make people rethink their stance. Like, okay, is this an appropriate question for me to be asking? And I think that's part of, when you interact with people, you should lead with curiosity, not judgment. And I think that's a
Absolutely.
gentle reminder.
Absolutely. That was a Walt Whitman quote years ago where he said, be curious, not judgmental. And that's a good way to live from that perspective. So one last question for you, Sammy, is what would you say to someone that is curious about trying carnivore?
I would say do it. You have nothing to lose, and you are N of one, as Catherine and I always say. Experiment and see what works for you. The way that I'm doing carnivore is not the same way that Catherine's doing carnivore because we're different people. You are on your own journey, and if you're confused or if you have questions or if you're not sure, a reaction you're having is normal. We have a community designed specifically to help you through your journey. We created a non-judgmental space where you can just ask questions, be yourself, and see what works.
Well, thank you, Sammy, so much for sharing your story with us and for everyone to look at on the Carnivore Together website. We're really happy to have people come and join us, and we're looking forward to reaching out to you also and getting your story and your journey at whatever stage that you are at, because whatever you have to share, just like Sammy, is going to reach out and touch somebody that's on their journey and needs to feel a sense of community. So thank you so much.
I can't wait to hear everyone else's story.